Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and today we have 3 elite tactical knives. We'll check out the other ones here in 1 second. First, I do want to break down this locking mechanism because it's pretty interesting, and I already know what you guys are thinking. And we'll go over the negative things towards the end. I know this thing just screams super elite tactical, but there is quite a bit of good here, actually, and we'll go through all that. I'm really fascinated by the lock. The locking system is pretty unique, and we're going to go into that, and then we'll check out the other designs, and then towards the end, we'll talk about the negatives. So, first off, this locking system it's unique, but it works extremely, extremely well. The detent, when you flip it, it feels assisted. I literally looked for a spring because I was wondering, did they somehow get a spring in there while also still making it a manual? Because it is so snappy, so good. It just hammers out there, and it literally feels like a spring. Now, when you disengage the lock, which all you do is just pull this back, kind of like an access lock, but you just pull it back, but you don't have to use both sides. You can just use the one. You just click that back, and then it'll free fall. Now, it does have a little spot right there that you have to overcome to lock it into the detent. But you can swing right past it. Now, I was trying to figure out how is this locking system working. I seen this little tab right there. I was wondering, is that like a spring or something? What is going on? So I wound up taking it apart, and let's check that out. Okay, let's take a look at how this thing works now. So it's pretty fascinating how it works. So this bar right here is under spring tension from these 2 little bars. So these 2 little bars right there create spring tension on this bar. Now this bar, you can see how it has a steel, a thicker point of steel right up there. Now when it's closed with this corner right here, it falls right into that little groove, and that's the detent. So this is acting as the detent right there. And once it breaks past that point right there, which works really good, it's basically free flowing. And then as it opens up, kind of like a backlock, it drops into place right there. There's the stop pin stopping it from going back. And then the lock bar, this little keyed area, stops it from going forward. Pretty cool. Now that we see how the locking system works, pretty unique, pretty interesting. Now the lockup, pretty solid side to side on this one. Up and down, I can wiggle a little tiny bit. Now, when I first got it, I didn't have that wiggle, and I sat here and flicked it and flicked it and flicked it and flicked it. And, it wound getting just a little tiny bit, like what you'd expect from like an access lock in some cases. However, I have one of the other ones that I took apart. When I put it back together, it had that, but then after I put it back together, it went away. So, but anyways, D2 steel, somewhat of a sheep's foot blade shape, G10 scales, deep carry clip that has big old button screws on it that you would think would be super uncomfortable, but it sits in the hand actually very, very comfortably. The clip just winds up landing exactly where it's not going to be annoying. I can choke up right there on top of the flipper tab. It works out really good ergonomically, action-wise, and it seems like it would be a decent cutting tool. But there is a bunch of negatives, and we're going to go into that here in 1 second. The next design, let's check out this next design. So the next one is the one we've seen taken apart. This one is a clip point blade, and this one is the Chaser. Deep carry clip again with the big old button screws, G10 scales. Again, super good action. It's very easy to swing past the that resistance right here. If you're used to closing any sort of access lock or compression lock, it's going to be second nature to you. You're going to easily be able to do it, but you do sometimes hit it right there, and then you just got to click it in with your finger. So if you let it drop, you just click it in. But it's still pretty fidgety, and it's different, but it's enjoyable. Now, this one's pretty cool. Like I said, though, you do kind of muscle a little bit. This is the one I did take apart after I tightened the pivots down on both sides because it's free spinning. One of the negative things we'll go over, free spinning pivot, but after I tightened it down, the blade play I had did go away and the up and down went away like 90%. So there's just a little tiny bit there that I can muscle. Now, as far as the grinds go, not bad. They're not super thin, but they're also not super thick. They're decent. Around 20 thousandths behind the edge. The next one is actually nice and thin behind the edge, which is this one. This one is the Backdraft. The Backdraft is a little different though, because instead of using D2 like the other ones, this one's using 8CR13 MOV steel, which I'm not a fan of that steel. I think they should have just went with the D2 or something better, but they did. And the handles are rubber, so it's like a rubberized material that's very comfortable in the hand. A lot of people don't like the rubber because of how it is going in and out of the pocket. In this case, it didn't work out too bad. I did slip it in and out of the pocket a few times, and it wasn't as bad as I felt some other knives to be. So it still has some density to it that it winds up being okay. Now this one, like I said, is a little bit thinner behind the edge. I think this one was like 16 thousandths, but that's with their edge angle. After sharpening it, it'll probably be 20 thousandths. But again, the action, super good. This one's locked up the strongest so far. No up and down, no side to side, which is really good. Very comfortable in the hand with the rubberized grips. In this case, I do feel the clip a little bit, but it's not horrible. And nice functioning blade shape, great functioning design. Very neutral ergos. And it's not a bad looking knife aside from the obvious. All right, really quick, I do want to thank sharperedges.com for sending me these knives to check out. I will link them down in the description. They do sell other knives on their site, so you guys can go and check those out. Now, in my opinion, most of them are those gas station style knives, but I know there's a lot of people that actually do like those style knives and are in that type of market. I usually push people away from them, but, like these ones are actually not too bad. And like I said, they did kind of surprise me a bit, but I'm going to link them down in the description for you guys. And I do appreciate them sending me these and having the guts to send them to me because they knew I was going to be hypercritical. Now let's talk about the negative things. So the negative things are just starting to list off the branding. This branding is so obnoxious. It looks like a gas station knife, and that is going to keep most people from buying it. Especially me. I would never buy this because of the branding. It looks like a gas station knife. And gas station knives they're not good, right? So because it looks the part, I don't care how good it is. I'm not going to buy it because it looks like all the other knives that show up with bad fit and finish, bad heat treats, bad grinds, bad edges, bad everything. So, and those knives can be very dangerous. And that's what this looks like because of these big branding marks, right? Elite Tactical screamed across it. That just looks horrible. It looks like a gas station knife. And and everybody knows, like, how dangerous those knives can be and how poorly they are usually executed. Now, the next thing is like the fitment, the fit and finish, the finishing work inside and out is not very good. They don't have locking pivots. You do have to use hardware on both sides to take them apart, tighten them. I only took one apart. So the one I did take apart did not have a D-shaped pivot, so it was a free spinning pivot. But other than that, like the little parts inside the knife, the finishing work just was not that great. It didn't look like they were cut out well, didn't look like they were finished well. I saw some chips and like some missed spots here and there. which ultimately leads to you wondering how well is it going to hold up over time. If all the parts are not fit together perfectly, well then over time that those little bit of gaps in that room for error is going to grow and grow and grow. And you wonder, like, after flipping this 10,000 times, is it still going to be locking up well? I would imagine probably not. This one's already got a little bit of up and down. This one, the up and down did go away 90% after I tightened the pit, after I took it apart and put it back together, but it still has a little tiny bit. This one's actually pretty solid in all directions. It just kind of feels like, with these two, it kind of feels like what you'd expect from like an axis lock sometimes, you know, like how you start getting that little tiny bit of movement. Now, does that mean it's going to fail? No, but it makes me wonder, like, over time, after I've used it and really put some work on it, is that going to get way, way worse? And probably when you look at the way how everything fits. Next thing, the grinds, they are very mismatched. So if you look at the edge bevels, you can see the edge bevels are not even at all. They're very wonky, very misground edges, and they're not sharp. These are very dull edges, especially compared to sharp. So I would want to sharpen these immediately. Next thing, I can tell they have burnt edges. I can see the browning from the belt from where they were sharpened. Now these are very cheap knives, so I don't want to beat them up too much, but you know, it is still a thing. It's a knife. The most important part is the steel and the edge, and the edges come bad, and you can tell they're burnt, right? So that means that even if it did come sharp, I would go to use it, and it would probably go dull right away. And then that makes me wonder, how would sharpening go? I don't know. I haven't sharpened it, but you know, considering everything else, I would imagine the heat treats are not very good. I would imagine that the heat treat is not at the top of their list of things to conquer here. So, it's very rare you find a knife with this type of branding and all the other little details where the heat treat's done very well. So I would imagine the heat treat, I haven't tested it, but just, you know, I imagine that it's pretty bad. Next thing, which I'm not going to get too into, but the little details, like the big button screws popping up on the clip. You know, I don't know why they had to do that. They could have just used flat screws. I'm not going to bitch about the T6s, but it just seems like kind of gas station knife tolerances, fit and finish work, right? So the one cool thing is this locking system. I honestly think if another company did this locking system, they could do it justice. I really do. I think this is a great locking system. I think it's very unique. I think it works pretty well. And I think with the right company cutting it out and doing the fit and finish work and putting it together, it could totally be done very well. Or at least it seems. Because the action is so good on these, and it's shockingly good. It really is. So there's a lot, you know, there's a little bit going for this thing, especially for the price. You know, it is kind of fun to fidget with. It is a knife still. You know, you could beat on it. I don't know how much it would take the abuse, but you know, they're kind of fun. And I can see why somebody might want to pick one up, you know, just to kind of try it out or just to have a beater knife with incredible action. But, you know, I just don't know how safe they would be over time. But anyways, just a quick look at them. I will link everything I can down in the description. They do have other models with this locking system. And, you know, I don't want to make it sound worse than it is because these aren't horrible. Like they surprised me. They really did. They surprised me. They were way better than I thought. So I got to give them credit for that. Way better than I thought. But there's just those little details that really stand out as a no-go for me, personally. But anyways, there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.